Hello YouTube, it's Valencia here again, and today we are going to be making magic out of an outright disaster. So this composition started life as an inspirational piece for the book, for the seismic song, and I had all of these great, grand ideas about what I was going to incorporate it. I wanted owls, I wanted wolves, very witchy vibes, just like the connections to nature and the atmosphere that you would get, the kind of like atmospheric horror really is what I was going for, but toned down because it's fantasy. And I wanted a willow tree, and we drove a 4-hour round trip down south, the state that we live in, to find a willow, and we did not find one. Well, we did find one, but it was scrawny and it was half dead, so it was one of those days. So rather than give up and be defeated in week 2 of my YouTube channel, we turned instead to more local things. We went to our park, took a bunch of shots of trees, and like there's a bridge that doesn't actually get used. I wound up using it as a perspective more than anything, but I'm sure it'll be used elsewhere. And while we were down south, we did take shots from the park that we visited down there. Yeah, I got a bunch of really great shots of piers and some really beautiful forest walkways that again will be used in later compositions, I'm sure. And I found this beautiful birch tree. I think it's a birch tree. I am not a witch. I do not have an affinity with magic and nature. And so that birch wound up being the focal point of this piece rather than the owl or the wolf that I had originally anticipated. But we were not able to make it to the zoo this week. Maybe next week we'll have some good wildlife images. So the stand-in that I have in this piece is my cat. That is Cho'Gath, who is named after a video game. He is which is familiar in this case, I suppose, although it's not actually in the novel. And then I went and broke my absolute cardinal rule, which is don't try to draw anything by hand, because I'm not very good at it. But I didn't have the statues that I wanted to go downtown. We have quite a few like war memorials and really beautiful bronze works that I wanted to get images of, at least so that I could use as textures, and I didn't get any of that this week. So I sat here and, as you can see, mutilated some blotches of dark paint and did my best to make them into the shape of people. And then while I was working on this, I had hiccups for about 2 days straight. So I don't know if you've ever messed with Photoshop or any of its tools yourselves, but when you have hiccups, it does not make for great fine detail. And so as I was recording this, my husband came in and looked at it midway, and I'm sure you can see it for yourself. He came in and said, "All hail the middle finger." It was just bad. Everything about this was bad. So what I did is the same process that you would do with writing. When you start stumbling, you just run into one negative thing after another. You step back, give it a couple days. Here I think I took 2 days, and before I opened it again. And then by that point I had a couple more images from local areas, the trees. My husband and I went on a walk and just took some photos while we were out. So we were able to take advantage of the little bit of rest period, incorporate those images into the final composition, and get something that felt right. And then I stumbled across a new problem, although this one is a better problem to have than the laundry list that came before. And this image is too monochromatic. It's just green. It's just green and brown. And I didn't have any flowers. It's fall. I waited way too long to try to take pictures of really vibrant flowers. So instead I turned to some Photoshop tricks, and this, I think it can relate back to writing, where you may find yourself having like writer's block, or nothing is really coming along, and instead of forcing it, instead of just writing really garbage and, just to write. That is the point where you have to depend on the techniques and the skills that you have learned over time to kind of carry you through those bad moments. And this is applicable, I think, to all forms of art. And this week it was applicable to everything that I was doing. As soon as I put it into the image, I think you can very readily see that not only is this image too flatly colored, it's also too dark, and the birch tree gave it different color and, more importantly, brightness. So it was I don't know, there's just something about introducing a new element into a composition or even into a story where, you might have your characters might be falling into this rut, they're all kind of sounding the same, the voices are blurring together, and something new comes along. There's a newcomer, somebody just totally different, and it just throws everything else into you can start seeing all the flaws. And as a writer or an artist or anybody who works on creative endeavors, that is not something to shy away from. That is like, oh, okay, I see how to improve it, now let's start working on that. And that birch tree was really the kind of shining moment for this composition. I was so happy to have it, and as soon as I dropped it in, it belonged. And then I promptly went and ruined it by putting in this moon. I had originally intended to put a moon in. It was supposed to be a crescent moon at the fore of the image as A, to act as a border, and B, to kind of lend it like a bit of ethereal magical glow. But it just wasn't working because apparently I can't draw a semicircle very smoothly. And it just didn't fit. It's too big. It's just kind of gaudy and in the way. It's like a Christmas ornament, it's just flashy just to be flashy. So I did away with that. And that also relates back to writing in many ways, because outlines function much the same way, where in the beginning you might have this wonderful idea and it has all of this potential, and as you go and you just add ideas or whatever, and you get down into chapter 14, chapter 15, and you realize that this thing that you had been working up to all along is terrible. It's just awful. And then you have to start over. But the most important part is that you learn from it, that you take what is viable from that idea and continue to apply it and move the whole piece forward. So in this case, the orange of the moon, so it started yellow, and then as I was playing with it, I saw that the orange looked really good. So I kept the orange and applied it elsewhere. And with this new, really beautiful blue purple background, the orange stuck out just so beautifully. And then, of course, immediately my thought was light. This, like the birch tree had brought in, this image needs more lightness to it, and the orange can be the color of lights. So I went outside and I took a picture of the lantern, that is not the lantern, the little light hanging outside of the garage, and it looks like a lantern. It's very stylized. And so I used that, and just using very basic Photoshop skills, I just applied a little bit of orange, a soft glowing orange around it. And then, of course, if it's going to be magic, it needs to have fireflies. And at this point, the composition really started coming together. I was very, very happy with where things were going, because it was just, up until this point, it was just really, just gross looking. And that happens a lot in the creative process. So really, while this composition started out as an inspirational piece just because it's pretty to look at, or I had intended for it to be pretty to look at, it really served as a reminder for me in my creative pursuits of how the whole thing works together. That this is exactly how the creative process works. No matter what you are making, nothing comes out fantastic the first time. Nothing does. It might take you 50, 60, 200 times before you find something that you think is decent. And this composition really embodied that. So to round things off, I took the image into Illustrator, and I made this little vector, like floral border thing for it. to replace the moon, because it did need a border around it, I think. So I went and did that, and then I think I lost some of the footage, or I just forgot to hit record. It's entirely possible that either of those things happened. But this is the final image, and so this is, like I said, this is an inspirational piece. None of this is actually in the book as you see it specifically. Like, there is no cat familiar, there's no familiar at all. But what I was going for is a lot of what Cassandra does throughout the book is nurturing. She is one of those where she just kind of stumbled into leadership more than actually went looking for it. And so in this, it was like every finger is another responsibility, but it all plays together, it all meshes into one final piece. And just like last week, I do have an art giveaway going on right now. This is Iskander, the love interest of book 1. All you have to do to enter is go to my Facebook page, which is linked down in the description below, and like the page and share the post, and that will put you into the pool of eligible contestants. And I'm just going to pick at random from that pool at the end, which is November 1st. So if you want to get in on that, you're running out of time, but you have a little bit to go, so you can still sign up. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next week.